The first thing I saw was her hand on my chest, small, trembling, wedding ring tan line on her finger, like someone had ripped the future off and left the mark. She leaned over me, eyes swollen from crying, and whispered my name with the kind of relief that should have felt familiar. Didn't. I stared at her mouth moving, at the way her lips shaped words I couldn't catch in the fog, and I knew, before a doctor said anything, that something inside my head had been wiped clean. She smiled through tears, squeezing my fingers as if she could pull me back with touch alone. I tried to squeeze back, but all I felt was a polite emptiness, like shaking hands with a stranger at a funeral. My name is Jason Hale. I'm 28, born and raised on a quiet suburban street outside Columbus, the kind of place where lawns get trimmed every Saturday and neighbors argue about trash cans like it's politics. I used to believe life was simple if you stayed steady. Work hard, keep your promises, don't run from the people who love you. Then a wet night on I-71 turned my life into a question mark. They told me I'd been in an accident, hydroplaned, hit the guardrail, airbags, ambulance, a coma that lasted long enough for everyone to learn how to pray in a new language. When I finally woke up, the room smelled like sanitizer and warm plastic, machines blinking softly like they were keeping score. A nurse spoke slowly. A doctor said memory loss like it was a bruise that might fade. But the woman at my bedside, she was the real shock. Her hair was chestnut, tied back in a messy knot. She wore a faded gray hoodie that looked slept in, sleeves pushed to her elbows. Her face was beautiful in a tired human way. No makeup, a pale line where tears had dried, eyes that had clearly refused to sleep. When she laughed, it broke on the last note, like she didn't trust joy yet. "Laura," the nurse said, gentle, like introducing family. "Laura, my neighbor." A flicker sparked. Sun on sidewalks, a mailbox with peeling paint, a girl on a bike racing me down the block. Then it vanished, leaving only her eyes waiting for me to remember the rest. She kept talking, soft and careful, telling me things as if laying them down one by one would rebuild my life. We grew up 2 houses apart, traded Halloween candy, fought over a basketball that rolled into her yard, made peace on the same porch step. We drifted in high school, circled back in our 20s, and somehow the old closeness had turned into something that didn't let go. She lifted her left hand and showed me the engagement ring. Simple, elegant. My stomach tightened. The sight of it should have been mine. The story should have been mine. But all I could think was how heavy it looked on a hand that had been holding my world together while I was gone. "We set a date," she said, voice shaking. October. I pictured a calendar with blank squares, and every one of them felt like stolen property. I watched her face for anger, for blame, for anything sharp. Instead, she leaned closer and pressed a careful kiss to my knuckles, as if asking permission from the man I used to be. Warmth traveled up my arm, and for a second the emptiness cracked. Not memory, something quieter. A pull. A sense that her touch had once been home. The doctor returned and said the words that made her go still. "He may remember, or he may not." Laura didn't let go of my hand. She just nodded, swallowing hard, and whispered, "Then we start from here." The hospital released me with prescriptions and a warning not to mistake waking up for being fine. I walked out with tender ribs, stitches behind my ear, and a mind that felt stripped bare. Laura drove because the doctor said no driving, and because my hands trembled at the thought of a steering wheel. My street looked like it was trying to comfort me. Trimmed lawns, flags on mailboxes, chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Instead, it felt like a set built from someone else's life. Laura parked in my driveway like she'd done it 1,000 times. She unbuckled my seatbelt without asking, fingers quick and sure. The casual intimacy of that motion hit me hard. Inside, my house was too neat. Groceries stacked, a blanket folded on the couch, keys hanging where they belonged. Someone had been keeping my life running while I wasn't there. Laura moved through the rooms without hesitating. Turning on a lamp, setting my pills in a row, filling a glass of water and placing it right by my elbow like she knew exactly where my hand would land. She checked the bandage behind my ear, her thumb brushing my skin, and my body reacted before my mind could. A shiver. She spoke carefully, choosing harmless topics. Every few minutes she almost said, "Remember," then swallowed the word. Each time, her eyes searched my face for a spark that wasn't there. I hated the disappointment I saw, and I hated myself for causing it. That evening she brought out a small box from my dresser. Photos. Proof. One was us at a fair, her cheek pressed to mine, both of us smiling like we trusted the future. Another stopped my breath. Me on one knee in my backyard, Laura's hands over her mouth, eyes shining. The ring on her finger was the same ring she wore today. I stared at my own face like it belonged to a stranger. "You asked?" she said quickly, misreading my silence. "You planned it. You were shaking so bad you dropped the box." The gap inside me widened. If I'd loved her enough to tremble, why did I feel nothing but a dull ache now? Like grief without a funeral? Laura stayed the night, insisting on the couch. At 3 a.m., I woke with my heart sprinting, convinced I was back in the dark moment before impact. I stumbled into the hallway and froze. Laura was already there, barefoot, hair loose, eyes wide but steady. She didn't ask what I saw. She just wrapped her arms around me, careful of my ribs, holding on until my breathing slowed. Her cheek rested against my chest like she belonged there. After that, she became my guide to a life I couldn't access. She drove me to rehab, sat through appointments, filled out forms when my focus slipped. Neighbors came by with casseroles and awkward smiles, telling stories about the old Jason, waiting for me to laugh. I nodded, watching their eyes dim when the laugh didn't come. Sometimes I caught myself watching Laura when she thought I wasn't looking. How she tucked hair behind her ear, how her mouth softened when she read. Attraction came in quick flashes, and it scared me because it didn't come with memory. It came with possibility. One afternoon I stood in front of the calendar on my fridge, finger resting on a circled date in October. Laura came up behind me so quietly I felt her warmth. "We don't have to talk about it," she said. I kept staring at that circle. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel for now." She slid her hand into mine anyway, gentle, not demanding. "Then feel nothing," she whispered. "Just don't let me disappear." The first time I tried to say the words out loud, my tongue felt like it belonged to someone else. We were sitting at my kitchen table. Morning light spilled across the wood in long, quiet strips. Laura had set a plate of toast in front of me and then pretended to fuss with the coffee, giving me space the way she'd learned to. The engagement ring flashed when she reached for a mug, and something in my chest tightened. Not jealousy, not love, just the sharp awareness of how much she'd invested in a man who didn't exist in my head anymore. I watched her hands. They moved with practiced gentleness, like she was always 1 second away from breaking something fragile. Maybe that fragile thing was me. Maybe it was her. "I need to be honest," I said. My voice came out rough. She froze, not dramatic, just still, like an animal hearing a branch snap in the woods. Her eyes lifted to mine. I'd rehearsed it all night. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that the only decent move was to stop letting her pour her life into an empty cup. "I can't give you what you came back for," I continued, forcing the words to form clearly. "I don't remember us. I don't remember loving you." The last part tasted like rust. Laura's mouth parted, then closed again. She swallowed hard. The skin around her eyes tightened, but she didn't cry. That restraint made my stomach twist. "You don't have to stay," I said, and I hated how calm I sounded. "You're 27. You have your whole life. You can walk away and it wouldn't make you a bad person. I'd understand. I want you to be free." For a second, she stared at the table like she couldn't trust herself to look at me. Then she stood, walked around the table and stopped beside my chair. I braced for distance, for anger, for the quiet exit I'd been pretending I could handle. Instead, she knelt, right there on my kitchen floor like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her hands came up slowly and rested on my thighs, warm through the fabric of my sweatpants. The closeness made my throat close. "You keep thinking this is about what you owe me," she said. She spoke steadily, each word placed with care. It's not. I tried to look away, but she caught my chin gently between her fingers and turned my face back to hers. Her touch was firm, not pleading. The kind of touch that says stay with me in this moment. I didn't come back because I needed the old you, she said. I came back because I love the person in front of me. Even if you don't remember why. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. But what if I never? My voice cracked. What if it never comes back? Laura's eyes shone. Not tears falling, but a shine like she was fighting them back with willpower. Then it doesn't, she said simply. Then we don't pretend. We don't fake a story. We start over. Start over. The phrase landed like a dare and a promise at the same time. She stood and reached for my hand. I gave it to her because saying no felt impossible. She guided my fingers to her ring, letting me feel the smooth band, the slight rise of the stone. My pulse jumped under my skin. This ring, she said, is not a chain. It's a memory. If it hurts you to look at it, I'll take it off. She made a small motion toward it. My hand closed around hers before she could. The action surprised me. It wasn't memory. It was instinct. Her breath caught, and for a second the air between us felt charged. Don't, I said quietly. The word came out before I could think. I didn't want her to erase proof that I had once been someone who knew how to love her. I didn't want to be the man who made her smaller. Laura's shoulders softened as if she'd been holding them up for weeks. She leaned in, slow enough that I could pull away if I wanted. When her lips touched mine, it was gentle, more question than demand. A soft, careful kiss that carried no expectation except honesty. My body responded with warmth. My mind stayed blank. The mismatch scared me, but it also lit something faint inside the emptiness. Possibility. Later that day, my friend Mark stopped by. He'd been my neighbor too, the kind of guy who still wore his high school hoodie like it was armor. He clapped my shoulder and joked too loudly, trying to make the room feel normal. Laura stepped out to take a call, and the second she was gone, Mark's face sobered. She's really doing this, he said, not accusing, just amazed. I stared at the doorway where she'd disappeared. I told her she shouldn't. Mark exhaled through his nose. Yeah, that sounds like you. Trying to be noble. He paused. But you know what else is you? Letting people love you even when you don't feel like you deserve it. His words hit harder than they should have. That night, I found Laura on my back porch, wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the quiet street we'd grown up on. The porch light painted her hair gold at the edges. I'm sorry, I said, stepping beside her. The apology was too small for what I'd put her through, but it was all I had. She didn't look at me right away. Don't be sorry, she said. Just be real with me. I nodded, throat tight. I am. She finally turned, and the expression on her face wasn't heartbreak. It was resolve. Then here's what we do, she said softly. No pressure, no pretending, just small steps. She reached for my hand again. When our fingers laced, the warmth spread up my arm like a slow sunrise. I still couldn't remember our past. But in that moment, with her hand in mine, I understood the first truth of our future. She wasn't waiting for me to become who I used to be. She was offering me the chance to choose her again. Falling for her the second time didn't arrive like a lightning strike. It crept in through the side door, quiet and stubborn, disguised as ordinary days. We started with rules, hers mostly. No assumptions. No stories about how it used to be unless I asked. She moved back to her place 2 houses down, even though it would have been easier to stay. I don't want you waking up feeling cornered, she said. I nodded, grateful and unsettled all at once. The distance gave us air, and somehow it made every step toward each other feel chosen. Mornings became our safest ground. Coffee on my porch, her sitting on the top step, legs tucked under her, mug warming her hands. She talked about work, about the neighbor's dog that barked at leaves, about nothing that carried expectations. I listened and watched the way her mouth curved when she smiled, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. Attraction returned first, an undeniable pull that had nothing to do with memory. I hated how easy that part was. I loved it too. Then the jealousy surprised me. It happened at the grocery store. I was reaching for apples when I saw her a few aisles over, laughing with a guy in a button-down who leaned in too close. My chest tightened before my mind could explain it. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself I'd given her permission to leave. Still, my hands shook as I dropped the apples into the bag. When she caught my eye, her smile faltered. She excused herself and walked over, concern written plain across her face. "You okay?" she asked. The answer rose sharp and honest. "I don't like that he looks at you like that." Silence stretched between us, thick with truth. Then she smiled, not triumphant, not smug. Soft. Relieved. "Good," she said. "Because I don't like it either." That night, we walked the block we'd grown up on. Porch lights blinked on one by one, fireflies flickering at the edges of summer. She pointed out small things, where the fence used to be, the tree that fell in a storm. I listened, but more than that, I felt the way she fit beside me, the way our strides matched without effort. When she slipped her hand into mine, it felt earned. Not everything was easy. There were days I woke with a hollow ache, certain I was failing some invisible test. There were moments she went quiet, grief washing over her without warning. We learned to sit with that too. On my couch, knees touching, her head against my shoulder, the TV murmuring while neither of us watched. She traced slow lines on my forearm, grounding us both. Mark showed up less. He meant well, but his jokes about getting back to normal landed wrong. Laura's sister was worse. Polite smiles that never reached her eyes, questions wrapped like concern. I saw the toll it took on Laura, the way she carried judgment like a second bag of groceries. One evening, I told her she didn't have to defend us. She stopped walking and turned to me. "I'm not defending us," she said. "I'm protecting what we're building." The words settled into me, steady and sure. The first time I kissed her because I wanted to, not because it felt expected. I knew. We were standing in my kitchen, dusk pouring through the window. She laughed at something small, and the sound unlocked something in me. I stepped closer, gave her time, and when our lips met, it was slow and intentional. Not a memory resurfacing, a choice being made. She rested her forehead against mine afterward, eyes closed, breathing even. No pressure, no rush. Later, alone, I stood in front of the fridge calendar again. October glared back at me. I took the pen and crossed out the date. Not to erase it, but to free us from it. When Laura saw it, her eyes filled. She nodded once. "Thank you," without saying it. That night, lying awake, I understood the shift. I wasn't chasing who I used to be. I was learning who I was now, and discovering that the man I was becoming still chose her. Not out of history, out of desire, respect, and a growing certainty that whatever love is, it can be built twice if both people are willing to lay the first brick again. I used to think memory was the proof of love, that if you couldn't point to shared moments, inside jokes, the first time your hands found each other in the dark, then whatever you felt afterward was only an imitation. I know better now. The morning it finally settled into me wasn't dramatic. No flash of recollection. No sudden return of the man I used to be. Just Laura standing in my kitchen, barefoot, reading a note stuck to my fridge with a magnet shaped like Ohio. She squinted, laughed quietly, and shook her head. "You still write grocery lists like you're preparing for winter," she said. Something in my chest loosened. I watched her move around the room like she belonged there. Not because she always had, but because we'd earned it again. Choice by choice, day by day. The memories never fully came back. Faces stayed blurry. Certain years felt like pages torn out. Doctors called it a partial recovery, like it was a compromise the universe expected me to accept politely. I did, because somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting to feel whole again. Laura didn't wait either. We kept our pace slow. Weekend walks. Dinners that burned because we talked too much. Late nights on my porch, shoulders touching, silence doing most of the work. The engagement ring stayed in her jewelry box. Not hidden, not worn. A symbol without pressure. Some nights I'd take it out, feel its weight, and imagine the man who'd bought it the first time. I didn't envy him. I understood him. The second proposal came without planning. We were at the block party. Kids chalking the street, neighbors arguing over grills, music drifting from somewhere cheap and cheerful. Laura stood next to me, laughing at something Mark said, her hand warm in mine. I looked at her profile, the ease in her smile, the way she leaned into the moment instead of bracing for it. I didn't kneel. I didn't give a speech. I simply said her name. She turned, eyebrows lifting. "Yeah. I don't remember the life we planned," I said. The noise around us faded into a hush I barely noticed. "But I know the life I want. And it's the one where I wake up and choose you. Every time." She stared at me, searching, not for memory, but for truth. When she found it, her breath caught. Tears came fast then, unguarded. She nodded before I could even reach for the ring. "Yes," she said. "That's the one I wanted too." We didn't move the wedding date back to October. We chose spring. Something about beginnings felt right. The ceremony was small. No stories about how long we'd been together, just how deliberately we were starting again. When she walked toward me, I felt the same nerves I'd felt the first time, maybe stronger. Because this time there was no autopilot, no history carrying me forward, just intention. Years from now, I might still forget things. I might lose pieces along the way, but I've learned this much with certainty. Love doesn't live in memory. It lives in presence, in staying when it would be easier to leave, in choosing the same person even when the past can't remind you why. I fell in love with my neighbor twice. The first time was fate. The second time was choice. And I wouldn't trade the second for anything.